Breaking news today. Cable news celebrates Governor Newsom as a hero in his clash with Trump, but the real issue at hand is power, not principle. Is this truly a fight for democracy, or merely another strategic play by the elite that overlooks the needs of ordinary Americans?
Hello, and welcome to That News Show, where we discuss the latest facts, fakes, and hypocrisy as reported by the legacy media. Let's roll the tape.
MSNBC reports that Governor Lawrence Newsom is demonstrating how Americans can oppose Donald Trump. We must consider whether this is genuinely a fight for democracy or merely another act of political theater orchestrated by those responsible for years of ineffective policies and moralizing. Consider this: the so-called resistance isn't about defending your rights or improving the economy, it's about power. Unchecked power held by establishment figures who are regulars at every cocktail party. Governor Newsom, with the support of cable news, purports to champion democracy. Yet his strategy involves changing the rules when persuasion fails. Is this truly democracy or just a new form of control? Also, the media focuses more on personalities and partisan conflicts than on pressing issues like inflation, job security, the erosion of civil liberties, and the growing reach of government authority. This obsession likely serves as a distraction. While you're engrossed in a spectacle, you might not question why your paycheck stretches less each month, or why unelected officials increasingly dictate your life. Remember, these are the same Democrats who spent years eroding trust in our electoral process, only to label anyone who disagrees with them as a threat to the republic. It's a classic strategy: accuse your opponents of your own actions and hope it goes unnoticed. So when you hear claims that Governor Newsom is showing Americans how to fight Donald Trump, ask yourself, who really benefits from this conflict? Is it the ordinary citizen, or is it the political elites in Sacramento and Washington clinging to power at any cost? This is the crucial question, one that the media seldom raises, but you definitely should. Here we go.
It is at this low point in Donald Trump's public support that he has chosen to try to rig congressional districts in Texas to give Republicans 5 more Republican seats in the House of Representatives so that Donald Trump can guarantee that Republicans will control the House of Representatives and he won't be impeached by the House of Representatives during this term of his presidency. There is only one state bigger than Texas, and that state has the power to crush Donald Trump's Texas plan for controlling the House of Representatives. And the governor of that state stepped up today to accept the challenge from Donald Trump and Texas Republicans.
Here's the good thing about California, folks. We're the size of 21 state populations combined. We're the 4th largest economy in the world. We're not a small, isolated state.
Republicans in Texas are taking bold action to ensure fair representation and stability in Congress by initiating a mid-decade redistricting plan. This strategy targets 5 districts currently held by Democrats in major metro areas such as Austin, Dallas, Houston, and South Texas. The aim is to secure a reliable majority in the House, addressing the razor-thin margins and persistent gridlock that has characterized Washington for years. The proposed new maps could have shifted 30 districts to the Republican column in the last election, each by a solid margin, suggesting a correction of previous districting that favored Democratic incumbents. Democrats have responded with obstruction, including walkouts in the Texas legislature and attempts to stall the process. This approach underscores their reliance on procedural tactics rather than substantive debate, diverting attention from pressing issues like economic uncertainty, rising inflation, and the erosion of civil liberties. In California, the Democratic response, led by the governor and celebrated by some as a defense of democracy, mirrors the political maneuvering seen in Texas. This strategy aims to consolidate Democratic power by targeting Republican districts, challenging the notion of transparency and public process. Despite California's economic size and influence, its policies have contributed to stagnation, high taxes, and the migration of working families, outcomes that are less than ideal. The national media often frames this interstate battle as a fight for democracy, yet this portrayal is misleading. Both parties engage in strategic redistricting, but only Republican efforts are criticized, while Democratic actions are viewed as good. This selective outrage overlooks the fact that redistricting is a legal and necessary process used by both parties to reflect demographic and political shifts. The difference is that Republicans are transparently striving to restore balance and represent communities long ignored due to Democratic gerrymandering. The ongoing focus on partisan conflict detracts from more pressing issues like inflation, business challenges, and threats to personal freedoms. The public discourse should shift from political gamesmanship to restoring trust in government, protecting citizens' rights, and ensuring Congress accurately reflects the people's will. The crucial question remains whether either party will address the underlying causes of our political dysfunction. Until then, we can expect more posturing from politicians and sensationalized media coverage that perpetuates division. The stakes are indeed high, but the solutions require more than redistricting. They necessitate a renewed commitment to constitutional principles, local autonomy, and genuine representation for all Americans.
We can't stand back and watch this democracy disappear. We can't stand back and watch this democracy disappear district by district all across this country, not just in Texas, but in Missouri, where J.D. Vance went just a week ago, in Indiana, in places like Ohio, in places like Florida.
Claims that democracy is vanishing across the country are alarmist and distract from the real challenges Americans face. In states like Texas, Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, and Florida, what we're seeing is the result of a highly competitive political landscape where both parties use every legal avenue to influence congressional maps. Similarly, in California, Democrats also manipulate districts under the guise of transparency. This is not a one-sided issue. Redistricting has always been political, with both parties guilty of gerrymandering to benefit their interests. The national media and Democratic strategists often depict Republican actions as threats to democracy, while framing Democratic actions as noble. This double standard undermines intellectual honesty, erodes public trust, and exacerbates partisan divides. Instead, Americans should focus on pressing issues like rising living costs, stagnant wages, and unsecured borders. The core problem is the increasing centralization of power and politicians' readiness to manipulate the system for personal gain. The use of tactics like walkouts and threats of arrest to block votes shows that neither party prioritizes genuine debate or compromise. They're more focused on maintaining power than representing citizens. Our country was founded on principles of local autonomy and self-governance, not on directives from political elites in places like Washington or Sacramento. The current trend of states threatening to redraw maps mid-decade and national figures interfering in state processes strays far from these ideals. The answer isn't more federal intervention or judicial activism, but a return to constitutional principles and respecting the rights of states and communities to self-govern. The partisan gamesmanship we see is indicative of a broken political culture that favors short-term gains over long-term stability. To restore faith in our institutions, we need less rhetoric about the demise of democracy and more honest discussions on making government accountable. Until both parties commit to addressing issues like overreach, lack of transparency, and disregard for local voices, disputes over district lines will continue to overshadow the essential work that needs to be done.
And so the fight against Donald Trump and Trumpism is now engaged in a way it has never been engaged before by California and its governor. Governor Newsom reminded the country that this all started with a desperate phone call from Donald Trump to the Republican governor of Texas, asking the governor to find him 5 more House seats in Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides, because they know what Donald Trump knows.
MSNBC's coverage of the redistricting standoff between California and Texas consistently portrays Governor Newsom's actions as a bold defense of democracy. The segment tends to emphasize selective facts and lacks objectivity, painting Republican efforts in Texas as election rigging while depicting California's countermeasures as principled resistance. This approach not only fails to help an honest debate on the issues, but also contributes to the polarization that many Americans find frustrating in mainstream media. The network's reporting is compromised by its selective use of facts that align with the Democratic narrative. For instance, it highlights Newsom's call for a special election to approve a new congressional map as a transparent process. Yet it overlooks that California's Democrat-dominated legislature would temporarily bypass the state's independent redistricting commission. This move contradicts their professed commitment to fair representation. Additionally, there is scant recognition that both parties engage in mid-decade redistricting for partisan advantage, and MSNBC does not examine the constitutional implications of Newsom's plan with the same rigor it applies to Texas Republicans. The broadcast lacks balance and objectivity, giving ample airtime to Democratic lawmakers and their claims of defending minority voting rights while dismissing or caricaturing Republican perspectives. It fails to explore the legal justifications presented by Texas Republicans or the procedural history behind their redistricting efforts. Similarly, it does not acknowledge that Democrats in both states use tactics like walkouts, legislative maneuvers, and court challenges to further their interests. The absence of credible Republican voices or independent experts results in a one-sided narrative that does little to clarify the complexities of the issue. MSNBC's use of polling data and expert opinions is also selective. The segment cites approval ratings and public opinion polls to support claims of waning support for Trump, but does not discuss the methodology, margin of error, or potential partisan bias in these surveys. The choice of guests and analysts predominantly supports the Democratic viewpoint, excluding dissenting or nuanced perspectives. The use of visual storytelling, including footage of walkouts, protests, and legislative sessions, is designed to bring out urgency and moral clarity, but often comes across as partisan theater rather than objective analysis. Although the graphics and charts detailing targeted districts in California and Texas are informative, their presentation tends to emphasize Republican threats while downplaying Democratic maneuvers. The editing choices, which oscillate between emotional sound bites and scenes of legislative conflict, prioritize spectacle over substance, leaving viewers with an exaggerated sense of crisis but little understanding of the actual policy implications. Despite these issues, the segment effectively synthesizes complex developments across multiple states, presenting them as part of a broader national trend. It is timely and responsive, tracking the latest legislative maneuvers and court challenges in real time. These strengths are diminished by the lack of critical scrutiny and failure to address deeper institutional problems driving the redistricting wars. A more balanced evaluation, incorporating a wider range of expert opinions and providing historical context for mid-decade redistricting, would enhance the coverage. The ongoing battle over congressional maps in Texas and California reflects a broader crisis in American governance, characterized by the centralization of power and politicians manipulating electoral systems for short-term gains. While MSBC's coverage is interesting in its narrative construction, it falls short of providing the honest, nuanced analysis viewers deserve. The network's partisan approach obscures critical issues like economic stagnation, declining public trust, and the erosion of constitutional principles. What the country needs is less media cheerleading and more substantive debate on restoring accountability, local autonomy, and genuine representation in Congress.
And so this is what fighting Donald Trump looks like. Gavin Newsom and California Democrats have found a way to fight Donald Trump's attacks on democracy by using democracy against Donald Trump. And so the biggest state in the union, the richest state in the union, has finally been provoked to show Donald Trump just how much power that state has. Gavin Newsom is now leading California to the rescue of the United States of America, to the rescue of democracy in America. And today, Gavin Newsom showed millions of people who have been feeling powerless, millions of Californians who voted for the California candidate for president in the last election, that they still have power. The voters of California can feel left out in presidential elections.
California Democrats are promoting their redistricting initiative as a bold defense of democracy. It appears to be more about entrenching Democratic control under the guise of grassroots empowerment. Despite Governor Newsom and his allies claiming that this special election will empower millions of Californians, the sidelining of the Independent Redistricting Commission, the key safeguard against partisan manipulation, suggests a swift abandonment of principles for political gain. From the perspective of everyday Californians, these political maneuvers seem disconnected from the pressing issues facing working families. The state's economic policies have led to higher taxes and a migration of residents seeking more affordable living conditions elsewhere. Claims of economic dominance are undermined by the rising costs of groceries, housing, and energy, which strain the budgets of ordinary citizens. Small businesses, vital to local economies, are hampered by regulatory burdens, adding to the economic challenges faced by families whose purchasing power continues to diminish. This focus on redistricting distracts from the critical need for fiscal discipline and pro-growth reforms that would genuinely benefit Californians. Consider a pie chart illustrating the decline of middle-class households in California against the backdrop of increasing government spending and public debt. The touted state budget surplus, largely reliant on unstable tech revenues and federal transfers, hardly reflects sustainable economic health. For many, the frustration stems not from who draws the congressional maps, but from the struggle to make their paychecks last through the month. While the tech sector thrives, manufacturing and agriculture suffer under stringent environmental mandates and high labor costs. Server workers, particularly in hospitality and retail, face stagnant wages and limited opportunities as businesses relocate or downsize. The promise of democratic renewal through redistricting fails to address these foundational economic issues, instead diverting attention from the policy missteps that have eroded California's competitiveness and affordability. The portrayal of this political maneuver as a rescue of democracy is misleading. Californians need accountable leadership that prioritizes economic opportunity and protects individual rights, not partisan gamesmanship. Media coverage that frames Newsom's strategy as a principled stand overlooks its true purpose: power consolidation, not voter empowerment. The selective outrage and emotional appeals offer little insight into the long-term impacts on household finances or local autonomy. Rather than heralding this as a Democratic victory, it is crucial to examine the real effects on families, businesses, and communities. The ultimate measure of success will be whether these changes lead to tangible improvements in daily life or merely perpetuate the cycle of political polarization and economic stagnation that has prompted millions to reconsider the state's direction. Well, there you have it. Tonight, we watch the media celebrate Gavin Newsom as a champion against President Trump. This spectacle is merely partisan theater, designed to divert attention from pressing issues such as inflation, economic stagnation, and the erosion of our freedoms. The previous Democratic administration left us with chaos and weakness. In contrast, the current administration prioritizes American interest, protecting our borders, defending our jobs, and resisting globalist pressures. We must question who truly benefits when politicians are glorified on cable news. It certainly isn't the average citizen. The real battle lies in securing our future, not in chasing headlines. What do you think? Give us your thoughts below, plus don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back with more soon.